Hey everyone, you know what time it is. We're going to be talking about probably one of the most long awaited videos in this series, at least, that you're going to hear from me. We're going to be talking about crossbows and the surrounding timing and kind of the hype around it, and is it really all it's made out to be, and stuff like that. In short, yes, it is. Uh, Crossbows are probably the most infamous timing because when you're a new player, it's very common to just repeatedly get crossbowed. Um, it's a timing that can really take advantage of people who are ignorant, who are playing very greedy. Um, I think that's the main differential between crossbows and classical junk. Classical junk, I had a really great conversation in my Discord with some people, and classical junk as a timing is more about pushing your own lead than it is about punishing others for being behind, or punishing others for being greedy. Right? You're not going to classical junk attack someone because they're being greedy. You're going to crossbow them for being greedy. And why is that? Well, crossbows is the one of the timings that has the it's got the potential to start killing people that are bigger than you, that have more hammers, if you catch them off guard and you catch them flat-footed. So when is this timing? This timing is it can be as early as late 50s. I've gotten crossbows before around 58. Usually, I'd say a very competitive crossbow timing is around 63. If you can get crossbows by 63, you'll probably have the jump on anyone you're trying to attack. But that's not to say they can't come later. In fact, crossbows, especially done by some of the more popular streamers, can come as late as late 70s, early 70s, right? Like the range at which a crossbow attack can take place is very wide. And the other thing that makes it really flexible is the policy trees. Unlike classical junk, which really wants liberty or honor, unlike chariot rushing, which really wants liberty, you can do crossbows on any policy tree. The main thing you need is gold, and gold is by far the most telling resource to see if someone is going to go crossbows or not. We're going to talk about ways to identify crossbow attacks in a second, but yeah, I kind of want to just make that point. Okay, so if we go to the ranking meter, everyone's favorite tool, let's talk about threat level and all this good stuff. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do we put for crossbows threat level? I'd say crossbows is pretty high up there. This is probably an 8 out of 10. It's something that every player is constantly thinking about. Now, I will say crossbows have the biggest opportunity cost. I've said this before. I'll say it again. But I hate crossbow attacks. The reason I hate crossbow attacks is because they have the biggest opportunity cost when it comes to sim infrastructure. Workshops and universities are two of the most important buildings in the entire game, at least for scaling your game, and you are sacrificing them by going crossbows. You're drastically delaying both, unless you're going a workshop into crossbow type play, but let's just, for the sake of argument, assume we're going straight there. If that's the case, you're giving up a lot of infrastructure time to kill a player. And of course that can pay off, but the problem is crossbowing, and in general, this is how timings work. If you attack someone at one timing, the next immediate timing, you are going to not be ready for. Generally, you're going to be vulnerable. Then by the timing after that, you'll be fine. You'll have scaled up and you should be okay. What does that mean? Let's talk about crossbows. Crossbows, if you are crossbowing someone and you kill them, you are going to be very vulnerable to an artillery attack from your neighbor, unless kill is super clean, your sim is incredible, everything like that. But that is the anomaly. Let's say attack goes normal, as probably you'd expect. In that case, the threat level for the following attack, getting artilleried, is much, much higher. Okay? So that's one thing you have to keep in mind with crossbows. But then by the time of land ships, you'll be fine, and you'll be able to, compete for timing and stuff like that most of the time. So for detection, so that's why threat level's an 8 out of 10. I mean, some people are going to put this at 10 out of 10 because crossbows is just always something you have to think about. And, that's fair. But I do think that there is such an opportunity cost. People have been doing it a lot less lately. Maybe let's put this at 8.5. For detection, how easy is it to detect? Unlike classical junk, this is probably one of the most easy to detect timings in the game. I will say, as you progress on and further in the game, certain time, like the most standard quote unquote timings, become more easily detectable. For instance, chariots is pretty detectable. We've talked about that, but classical junk is impossible to detect. Crossbows is also pretty. It's not. I argue it's pretty easy, but it's not nearly as easy as Arty Cav is, or it's not nearly as easy as Landship is, right? So for those reasons, that's kind of what we're comparing it to. I'd say detection is probably like a 5 out of 10. And let's talk about what you have to look for when you're going to go crossbows. Well, if your neighbor is going to crossbow you, the main thing they need, as mentioned before, is gold. On average, you're going to need around 700 gold to perform a crossbow attack. Why 700? Well, 700 is 10 crossbow upgrades. So if you're just going to build crossbows and you want to upgrade 10 of them, that's 700 gold. You can obviously do it with less. You can do it with no money at all and just go workshops into crossbows. But generally speaking, if you want to have a very fast, clean kill, it's usually around 500 to 700 gold that you're going to need for crossbow upgrades. Each upgrade is 70 gold. The main thing that new players are told to watch out for in crossbows is guilds. But there are ways to kind of reduce the amount of exposure you have to being in the guild's tech that because of that, it's easy to kind of like say maybe guilds isn't the full story. If you're waiting for guilds, often it's too late. By that point, the person has obviously been investing a ton into this. They're clearly on the road to killing you, and it's going to be hard to actually, prevent it in the first place. So that's one thing I want to make sure people are aware of. That if you are of the opinion where like you're thinking, oh, I'm just gonna chill with until I see guilds and then I'll start making timings. No, that is not how that goes. So detection, I'm gonna leave that at 5 out of 6. I think in general crossbow timings are very, very easy to see coming. You have to, by that point in the game, you'll have seen their whole land likely. You'll understand kind of, once you get enough reps, you'll kind of get a good sense of what they are thinking and how they want to play the game. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise if someone's going crossbows. You should be able to put scouts on their borders. They're going to need roads. I will say crossbow attacking is, it's not nearly as all-in as the previous attacks. Attacks become less and less all-in the further you go, which is, again, good balance. So we're going to put this as a 6 out of 10. I will say it is very high commit. It requires a lot of money. It requires deviating from mainline tech paths. But Guilds is a very good sim tech for getting Machu Picchu and stuff like that. Stoppable. This is a hard one because it's very land dependent if a crossbow attack is stoppable or not. I think if we made 10 out of 10, 10 being the highest, hardest and most difficult timing to stop. Crossbows can be up there. I'm going to put a range this one. This is the only one that's going to have a range. I'm going to put 4 to 8 or 4 to 8 out of 10. So why am I putting 4 out of 8? And then of course this is definitely a cop-out answer, and if you have a problem with that, fuck off. But the reality is, depending on how much prep the guy has, depending on your land, can very much depend if the attack is stoppable. If your land's very open, there's not a lot of rivers, you don't have any way to slow him down from coming at you. If he has enough money, you always die. Like, because the crossbows will kill everything in their path, and they'll slowly just be pushing in, suffocating you, and then eventually you'll die. That's the problem. Land dependent, this is another interesting one, because I just kind of alluded to the fact that crossbows are quite land dependent, but at the same time, they're really not. If you have enough stuff, you have enough hammers, you're going to make really good headway. So I'm going to put land dependent. This is going to be a solid 5 out of 10. I think in general, crossbow attacks are more sim dependent than they are land dependent. By that I mean, if you have enough, like, unlike chariot attacks where it's mostly land dependent, crossbow attacks are very much about how good is your sim getting there? How fast did you get there? How much money do you have when you got there? These are all kind of questions that you have to be like kind of thinking about. How much are you going to come? Are you attacking with terracotta? Does this guy have great wall? Like, so it's more about the sim than it is about the land. And I think as we start progressing forward and further, it all becomes less land dependent. Difficulty, again, this is kind of in this phase where these attacks are quite hard. Crossbows is an attack that can be defended with junk, and by that I mean you can put enough swords and pikes in the way to stall them that it'll eventually hold. Like, eventually they'll stall out. There are certain land formations depending on hills where crossbows can't shoot over hills, and maybe they only have like a couple shots, and eventually, like, you'd have to completely surround the whole city, and that's not practical a lot of the time, right? So in some cases it is possible to stack just with land, but the difficulty is about getting there. It's also about simming out. Similarly, we don't have a lot of the core infrastructure by Skip going to crossbows. We don't have workshops, we don't have universities. How good are we going to be able to flip these cities? What is our culture like? This is often the time, if we're going straight to crossbows and we're getting it early 60s, we don't have honor opened yet. And if that's the case, we're not even farming culture. Ideally, we are, ideally we get honor open by that point. That way we can at least farm some culture and stuff. But, these are all different things that make it a little more difficult than the future attacks we'll talk about. I also think crossbows is an attack that is very dependent on first move. Unlike other attacks like classical junk or later attacks such as Artie Cav and land chips, crossbows is very much about first move. If you have first move and the opponent doesn't, and you're the attacker, you are killing every single unit on the screen that turn and then filling those spots with more crossbows. The opponent can't even react. So if you are someone who has first move a lot, crossbows is going to be a great attack for you. Okay, so now that we have that covered, let's jump into the gameplay that I'm going to be covering in this little video. So this is taken from one of my tournament games. I was playing Babylon here. Not the best land formation, but what I'm doing here is something a little interesting. So it's turn 58. Not the best game by any means, but it's okay. I'm teching guilds. We're gonna skip ahead a little more. I'm teching guilds down. 70 signs a turn. I fuck up and I went philosophy here. I could have had crossbows like this turn if I didn't go philosophy, or if I did the philosophy thing better, and doesn't matter. Babylon things. So I'm 2 turns off guilds. I have engineering. I have if you look here, optics is 1 turn, guilds is 1 turn, horseback riding is 2, engineering is about to be 2. Oh shit, what did I do? Oops, I just pressed the numpad. So I'm teching horseback riding to 1. Okay, cool. Now what are we going to do? We're going to finish horseback. We're going to finish engineering. We're going to finish optics all on the same turn. I'm sorry if you can't see this. It's hard for me to, pull this up because it's in a video. And I took this right from my live stream. This is as a stream VOD. This is also on my channel. If you're interested in watching this further, feel free. I'm pre-building a fuck ton in these cities, so you'll see just how many units I have. So we are finishing optics now, and now we finish guilds. Keep in mind what I said before, where people are going to say, or only going to look for when people enter medieval. Now, what is one of the alternatives to this is I'm still in classical at this point. Any of my neighbors will know I'm going crossbows, not only because I have 33 gold per turn, but because I'm in classical building army with high GPT, and it's this late into the game and my sim's not bad, right? That means I'm intentionally slowing down classical. I'm intentionally slowing down entering medieval. That way I can, in this case, hide the fact that I'm entering guilds. Okay, so 83 signs per turn. Let's see how much we overflow because we just finished all of those techs simultaneously. Okay. Next turn. Okay, so we are getting a 2-turn on guilds. Okay. At this point, I'm good friends with Sween. This was a tournament game, but I'm good friends with Sween, and after the game, we talked about it. He had no idea this was coming until I entered guilds. So he has effectively 2 turns to prepare. If I hard tech guilds, if I went engineering, entered guilds on turn 60, I'd still be getting it around the same time, right? The only difference here is I maybe added one or 2 turns to do this, but I drastically reduce the amount of time that I'm actually in guilds. I'll make a video eventually talking about how to do this, like in terms of the nitty gritty. See, this is when he messages me, is that you in guilds? Even if I was, why would I tell you? Sword building time kick, right? He only just started building swords. And by that point, it's way too late. Fuck off. And by that point, it's way too late. And, we can just skip ahead here, but he dies very, very quickly. So we attacked on 68. We take cap on 76, I think. All right. Very fast war. One thing I want to mention is the power of crossbows is the fact that they're so fucking strong, but mostly, and this is probably one of the most important things, if you can take anything away from this video, it's this. The real power of crossbows is it's a late enough timing that it is so strong that if the opponent is not ready for it, you can still kill them, even if it's slightly outdated or they have the quote unquote counter unit, which in this case is knights. It doesn't matter, right? If you are prepared and they are not, you can effectively quote unquote waste no time at all by going to someone else, right? And this is the mistake in this game, and I proved it later on. But this is the mistake in this game. I'll link this in the description, but that I didn't do, which was the idea of keep going. And this is a very common concept in Civ, and a lot of people talk about this all the time, where when you have momentum, the worst thing you can do is slow down, when in reality, it should just be keep pushing your lead, keep pushing the advantage, especially if you're killing into a corner. Right here, the objective correct play for me is to keep going and blow up Glosson. I have a 100,000 or like a 90,000 standing military that I'm just doing nothing with. And at this point, Glosson's probably building universities, right? He doesn't want to slow down his sim to like have to. Not only that, he probably doesn't have guilds. He surely does not have crossbows. He probably doesn't have trebuchets in the case of Korea. He definitely doesn't have knights. So all of this to say, because crossbows are so strong, it's rare that if you win the attack, that you don't have units left over. There's two alternatives. The first alternative is you go take your units, you find islands, and you start farming the islands. And that's what I ended up doing in this game. But in a lot of cases, if your kill was very fast, it was very clean like mine was, you can keep pushing on into the next person. As I mentioned, some crossbow attacks happen late 70s. That is right now. You can still make it work. You can still blow them up. Is it going to be as clean? Of course not. Is it going to affect your sim? Probably. But you effectively just killed 2 people, right? For the cost of 1. And that's the real value, where if you're able to keep pushing and keep going, you can really make a huge impact on the game. This game, I ended up not doing that. I killed all of his cities, whatever. I didn't attack Lawson for some reason. And then, of course, to no one's surprise, Glosson comes and he pushes me with bombers and then eventually land ships, and then I die. And then Glosson won the game. And, Glosson played a phenomenal game. The objective right thing for me, and we actually tested this later on, me and someone in my stream, Zitz, who's a fantastic war player. But we tested it out and see what the game would look like. This is what would happen. I think it was 78. So let me skip to that. This is probably a better word player than me. So I think we go about even in general. But this is what would happen if I just went straight to Glosson. I ignore this Tampere, I ignore Turku. This is what would have happened, where I'm just pushing into Glosson's capital. I have 2 generals. He has none. I'm just going to go kill him. So that is all I wanted to cover for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.